Hi, and welcome back to Continual. It's another episode of the Panel Room, and I'm your host, Jim Nettles. Tonight, we are taking a look and a dive all into all things YouTube. So while we're talking about YouTube for authors tonight, let's see who is bringing their channels into ours. So Russ, welcome, and you're up first.
Hey guys, how are you? I'm Russ Colchimero. I'm an author of sci-fi, fantasy, mystery, and some horror. I'm a member of Crazy 8 Press, and I also host a weekly podcast, Russ's Rock and Roller Coaster, which some of you may have seen, hosted on Wednesday nights. I just had your colleague Gail Martin on the show just a couple weeks ago, and primarily use my YouTube channel for hosting my podcast episodes.
Jack?
Hi, I'm Jack Cohen. I write a book series called Recollections of a Runite, which is an urban fantasy series. I also have a new series coming out this year in September. The first book of a trilogy is called Locke's Galactic Mess, and it's coming out with Evolve Publishing. I also have a YouTube channel called Books, Bullets, and Booze, which is a book review, but with a twist.
And Morgan.
Hi, I'm Morgan Hazelwood. I write from my lair in Northern Virginia, and I blog, vlog, and podcast writing tips from the pros from conventions like these, and of course, my own writerly musings. I'm also an actively queering fantasy author, and so I'm everywhere you want to be.
Well, and of course, so in terms of YouTube channels, I think the first one I put together was 10, 12 years ago. I'd hate to go back and look and figure that out at this point. We've got part of where we drop everything for Continual right now is Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. We're actually looking at expanding those channels. I've also got the Author Essentials channel and my channel, and we also do stuff with clients, building out YouTube channels for everything from fiction, nonfiction, all sorts of different fun things along those lines. So with the idea, because I can tell you the first time that I created a channel 100 years ago, it was purely an experiment. I was curious to see how it worked. We were doing some stuff in tech, and it was like, all right, great. Let's see what we can do to play with this. And we used it to promote both some products, some technology stuff we were doing, had a lot of fun with it, and ran it as long as the project went. So Russ, how about you? What made you decide to give YouTube a shot and really want to dive into really new media?
So for me, YouTube was really phase two. In the our downtime when we were all sort of hunkered down in spaces like these, I launched the podcast June of 2020. My initial thought was, because nobody knew how long we were really going to be home, I figured, I'll get maybe a half dozen. I'll ask a couple of, writer buddies to see if they want to come on, do some interviews. And I figured, maybe I'd get a half dozen episodes and I'd be done. Well, 3 years and not quite 100 episodes later, I'm still going strong. This is nothing that I really saw happening. But I knew that from the beginning, even when I started, that you're only going to get so many eyeballs live, right? Even if people really want to see it, you're competing against everything else. So I wanted a place where the interviews themselves would live. So that's really where YouTube came into it. I didn't start with YouTube and back into it. YouTube was really just a means to an end. And now I've just kind of found that, as things have evolved, I really want to hear what you guys were like. When we were first home, one of the advantages for me, I thought, was, first of all, everyone was home and we were physically home. Like we were stuck indoors. You couldn't go anywhere. So
why would you want to?
Right. Even if you could, right, it was a crazy time. And I knew I was going to have some eyeballs, and, normally I've been out on book tour for, I don't know, however many years, 12, 15 years, and conventions were done. And there's a whole bunch of folks who still have the appetite, right? They want to see authors. They want to nerd out and be with their people. And the authors themselves wanted some way to be seen, to be heard, to interact. So I figured, let's see how many eyeballs you get. And one of the advantages that happened probably for the first year actually was that at that time I think I was kind of an early adopter, and either that was actually true and I just didn't know about everyone else who was doing it, or maybe I was. It doesn't really matter. But what was not happening is that whatever you're watching, if you're watching Netflix or Hulu or Apple or whatever it was, everything was shut down. Production was shut down. There were no new movies being filmed. There were no new TV shows being filmed. Whatever they had in the can was done, and that was it. So you had a lot of focused attention. And then as time went on and things slowly started to open up, well, now there's a few more movies that are out. There's more TV shows being made. There's more podcasts coming out. And now you're really fighting for those eyeballs. And now we're just completely back in full swing. So having the ability for fans or whoever wants to come by and view it at their leisure was really a big boon, because it's just more difficult now, I find, to capture live eyeballs week after week, just because there's so much competition out there. So the YouTube channel, I found, has really become it became more important to me than I thought it was going to be longer term. I don't in any way, shape, or form claim to be a YouTube expert. In fact, I'm really curious to hear what you guys do. It has been effective, but I'm sure that whatever is possible to do on YouTube, and the delta is, here's what's possible and here's what I do. And I'm looking to can I even incrementally capture more eyeballs, get it out there more and use it more effectively. But I do really like having it because the content lives forever, or as long as I keep it up there. And I find that just over time, you just start attracting new people, and people pop in, and every once in a while you get an episode that really just explodes. And I'll just name one as an example. So did anyone watch the show, Mindhunter, right? Remember that, right? So the show Mindhunter is based on a book called Mindhunter. And the author of that book is Mark Olshaker. And he co-wrote it with John Douglas, who was the real life FBI agent. And the two of them actually do investigative cases. And one of the cases they were involved with was the JonBenet Ramsey case. I did an hour with Mark Olshaker on JonBenet Ramsey. I think I'm up to something like 15,000 views with no promotion at all. They just keep coming and coming and coming and coming to it. I wish that all my episodes were getting those kind of eyes. They're not. That was really the anomaly. But the fact that it lives gives these people a chance to do it. So it really kind of showed me what the power possibility is. Whether or not I can really tap into that power more globally remains to be seen. And I'm really curious to what you guys have to say.
Well, since Janine has been able to pop in, would you like to give and introduce yourself as well?
Yes, and I just realized I wasn't muted, so I've been really noisy this whole time too. I am very sorry. I thought this started at 7:30, which is what I had on my calendar, and the alarm on my phone went off at 7:15 to tell me to go log in, and I had a message saying, "Are you coming?" Noise upstairs is my sweet husband making me dinner, because I was going to try to shove that down my throat too. Anyways, I'm Janine K. Spendlove. Hey, all. I signed up for this one because I thought it would be fun. I recently retired from the Marine Corps in October, and I decided to take a gap year before I went and looked for another career, another job. And I thought it would be fun to start a YouTube channel, which is something that I had been considering for a few years. And then I've been told by a ton of people that I should start one. I'm like, everybody has one. I wouldn't even know what I would do on my YouTube channel. But I decided to start one. Right now, it's currently focused on my sewing projects. But I also talk about, we're currently doing a schoolie build, meaning we bought a school bus. We're converting it into an RV. So about once a month, I post, kind of like a recap of, hey, this is what we've done so far. And then once the schoolie is complete, It'll be like, these are our adventures in the schoolie, and this is like a video I just finished shooting this afternoon for this dress and casserole carrier for a mid-century modern casserole party I'm going to. Anyways, I am also a writer and all those fun things. So that is a very weird, all over the place introduction of myself. Hope that's what you were looking for.
Sure, you're caught up mostly. We'll be fine. Jack, how about you? What drew you to decide to jump into the grand YouTube waters?
I didn't jump in. I slowly dipped a toe, took it out, walked around the pool a couple times, and then finally get in. I was looking at BookTube. I like BookTube. I watch a lot of stuff on it, but I kept noticing that it's all the same books for the most part. They keep going over Tolkien. They keep going over Martin. What I wasn't seeing a lot of was indie books, and I read a lot of indie books. Especially with Kindle Unlimited, that's my go-to for a lot of stuff. So I kicked around with a friend, and we wanted to do something, but we wanted to do a little different. And I'm former military. I got 30 years law enforcement experience. I've been around guns my entire life, and I like my alcoholic beverage from time to time. So we decided to do something different. And Books, Bullets, and Booze is basically, we'll take a book, let's say something from Ian Fleming, a James Bond book. And we'll talk about the book. I'll shoot a Walther PPK, discuss the firearm. And then as I'm discussing the book more, I'll sip a martini shaken, not stirred, which, by the way, is horrible, as I discuss the book. And I'll also discuss the drink. So got it all set up, ready to do, procrastinated. One of the reasons I signed up for this specifically was to force myself to launch the channel. So I'm definitely the newbie in the group. The channel's only been up for a couple of weeks. So, yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Well, send out your link. I'll go follow you.
Cool. Thank you.
Morgan, how about you? What caused you to dip your toe in the grand waters of Google?
I like to call it Ariel syndrome. I started off with a blog in 2015, and I knew that a lot of people, I share writing tips from the pros and my own writerly musings. And partially because when I go to conventions like this one or in person, I like to attend as much as possible. My sister says it's like I'm trying to get recertified as a aspiring writer or something. I think my peak was like 32 panels and events in one 4-day convention. And so I have all these notes, and panels are all over the place. We don't necessarily make nice pointed bullets that you can take away with you. And so I would rewrite my notes, turn them into bullets. And that way, A, I looked at them again. B, I figured out what the takeaways were. And C, I could share them with people who couldn't attend or didn't have the time, or auditory processing isn't their forte, because there are plenty of people in all of those situations. And so, plus I'm talking about my own writing adventure, which, is what most aspiring authors are doing, whatever. And so I wanted to be more accessible. I know a lot of people, especially since I'm just a talking head, are going to be doing other things while, if they could listen to me, they'd be, doing dishes while listening, because if they're sitting at their computer, they're going to be trying to write or what have you, scrolling TikTok, who knows. So this way I get to review my notes, share my notes, and keep myself consistent. I have been blogging since 2015, doing the YouTube since 2017. And then in 2020, just like Russ, in that summertime frame is when I started live streaming productivity sprints on Sunday afternoons. And I started turning my YouTube into an actual straight up podcast on the podcast hosts with a 2-year delay, because I already have the audio. There's no reason not to put it somewhere else. Going back to the Ariel syndrome, because I want to be where the people are. I prefer blogs, but just because that's my preferred consumption method doesn't mean that's for everyone. And I want to make sure that I'm accessible and that people can listen to me and absorb my brilliance in any form possible. So that's where I'm at. And yeah, so every Thursday, I haven't missed a week since I started with the vlog. I was a little spotty at the beginning with the blogging, but like after 6 months, every Thursday. And I've branched out, and the blog has author spotlights and stuff. But because I'm a talking head, I don't have to coordinate with anyone else, and I do zero post processing. So that simplifies my process and streamlines it, and I'm jumping ahead. So
Actually, I would say that as well. I do no editing either. I do an. There you go. I tell everyone I do an hour, whatever we get, and that's it. And it's not that I don't want the editing, bells and whistles. I just don't have the bandwidth at all.
You can have consistency, or you can have clarity.
Yeah. I don't have it. I'm just between my kids, my day job, this book tour, writing, life. There's no way. And I don't have the technical know-how, and I don't have the desire to learn it. And
well, don't worry. All I do is
I can't afford to pay anyone.
All I do is editing, and it's the one thing that really holds me up. So when we get to that part, I can talk about that at length, because it is a steep learning curve. I can talk about a lot of that stuff.
Well, to tell the story of the history of ConTinual, because again, we're officially coming up on our 3-year anniversary, and about the time that this drops, coincidentally timed. And the history of it actually goes back to about 2018. I had the AE channel going. Primarily, we used it as an archive for workshops and stuff we'd done at conventions, or I taught live, things like that. And Gail Martin, John Hartness, a few other friends of ours, we were sitting around at conventions, and I was threatening to do a larger virtual event and virtual convention sort of thing. And everybody at the time thought it was crazy that nobody would sit and watch virtual panels like what we do at conventions, right? And I kept sort of pitching it and playing with it, but it was one of those things of bandwidth of how much time is there, how much time is there. And then it was end of 2019. I was sort of ramping up what we're going to do with the AE network. And I had some other authors that were coming in. We were doing a bunch of shows around the business side of it. And then the grand lockdown happens. And was sitting there one morning in early April, about right this time. And Gail was on vacation at Disney and sent John and myself a text that said, okay, I did a thing. What do we do next? Well, the I did a thing was we had a logo and we had a name. And a couple of weeks later, we dropped our first panel room, and we dropped our first episode of Hot Off the Press, because that was kind of the original idea. Well, let's do a panel show and let's do something to promote the new releases, and let's go see what happens. And we're more than 700 shows later with a whole lot of tracks and things, because we don't know any better than to, hey, let's go throw something else at it. And so as people that are out there debating doing this have probably already gleaned a little bit, there's a little bit of work involved. So let's actually dive a little bit into work.
Jim, can I ask a question that we can either address on the end, or one of the things that I've been, and I addressed it in like my second or third video, where I was like, and I would like to talk about my writing, but I'm not really sure how to do that on a YouTube medium. As I'm sitting here and you guys are talking about ConTinual, I'm like, well, duh, I can find a way of bringing this to my channel, but not quite sure how to do that. How do I cross promote these panels that I do on ConTinual?
You can create a playlist.
That's true. And I can also share because I'm still like, I started my channel at the end of October. So I still feel very much like a newbie. As opposed to Morgan, who's like, I've been here for years. I know what I'm about. I'm like, what is going on? What are shorts?
Well, I've been on TikTok since Friday, so I'm not good at shorts.
Well, I've made a lot of Instagram reels, so I'm just lazy, and I just move those over from Instagram to my YouTube.
All right. Well, we're going to pivot slightly from where I was going to go.
Sorry, I didn't want to derail you. We can talk about it at the end. I just wanted to get that question out there because it does talk about immediately tying into what you were talking about, which is ConTinual.
Right. No, I mean, and of course, we encourage everyone to create playlists from all the stuff that we do, and only some of the stuff is behind. But one of the other things that is new out there for people in the YouTube space is YouTube Shorts. So if you have been preparing stuff for Instagram and for TikTok, Toxic Talk, YouTube Shorts is the next place that you can take and repurpose the same short form video. Or when you do a podcast, take snippets out of it, cut pieces, and rebroadcast that as a short to help promote the channel, podcasts, all that kind of good stuff.
To that end, I will tell, if y'all look on my channel, you'll see that, like, aside from my first long video, which got over 20,000 views, I don't know how that happened, but it did. All of my other long videos have like 40, maybe 100 on a good day. And then my shorts will get like 1,500 or 10,000, like, and it's wild. Sometimes I don't even know, like, why. And if you hear a weird snoring sound, it's this little guy right here in my lap. So the shorts, I've noticed they're eminently more consumable because the people who follow my channel, who want to watch the detailed sewing content where I go into what I'm doing, or want to watch the detailed schooly content, who want to, they're going to sit through a 10 to 20 minute video, but my shorts, they're less than a minute. And also I think YouTube is really promoting the heck out of them right now. So I get a lot of my viewers, I think, because they find my shorts and then they'll come in that way.
And YouTube is promoting it very heavily. They're putting people doing a lot of shorts up. So let's talk a little bit, and we can come back around to how to promote YouTube channels, because I want to spend some time on that as we build up. But I want to talk a little about, what does it actually take to run a channel, create a channel? What does it look like for you? Audio, video, editing. As we've already discussed, we don't do a lot of editing. Even for ConTinual, I don't do a lot of editing for any of my shows, but not necessarily for laziness. It's because I've spent enough time in media where, like I did a show last week. It dropped that the Creating Pros that dropped this week, with a couple of professors that have a book on fandom and use and how fandom can help community and all the rest of this. It's an activism book and everything else. And they were like, "So how much editing do you do?" And I'm like, I generally try to do as little as possible, because I don't want any appearance of having taken something out of context. I've had it done to me. I've had it happen. I've had to edit programs where we were trying to tailor the message. So generally, I don't like to edit much, other than if there's like a technical issue or a big pause, or somebody comes and says, "I probably shouldn't have said that." Now, it doesn't mean I'm not going to hold on to that clip for, future use, but, we'll trim those kinds of things out. But other than that, we don't do a lot of edits. We put headers and trailers on. I create all the headers and trailers we use, that sort of thing. But so, Jack, since you're really just getting started, what does the process look like for you?
All right. We do some editing because at some point I go from talking about the book to being usually on a gun range, because a lot of times it's guns for weapons. So I cheated. I have a buddy who owns his own photography video studio. I drafted him into it. His name's John Love, by the way. I got to throw that out. So he does a lot of the editing for me. So when I'm talking about the book, I'm pretty much here exactly like this, and I'm just using, microphone and a camera. But then when we go outside, he's got, the expensive equipment. I mean, we did one in the rain, and he's got an umbrella because he can't get anything wet, and he's yelling at me that I scheduled it in the rain. And then we gotta put it together. When he does it, it's seamless. He's got the fades, he's got the lettering popping up. You got the book in the background here for a couple seconds. It disappears. It shows up again every time I talk about it. Yeah, but then there's the times when he's not available, and I gotta stay on a schedule. So like, there's one that he did a great job on, and then I had to snip something, and I'm talking in the range, and there's a clear cut where where I jump to another thing, because it just the part that got cut out wasn't necessary. And he hasn't seen that yet, but I'm gonna get yelled at when he does. So yeah, we do some editing, probably more than a lot of other people. The other thing is with the booze part of it. Obviously I don't play with the weapons the same day I'm drinking the booze, but if I got to do a couple of takes, sometimes I have to stop and do it another day. So there's that.
How about you, Morgan? What does your process look like?
So, when I'm live streaming productivity sprints, that's just me chatting with people in the chat, or I have two other co-hosts that generally join me, Doc Coleman and Sako Toomey. But for my main writing tips weekly post, it's my blog and video format, which used to be the tagline. And so doing the video is half of my blog editing process. So I write the blog post, I edit it once or twice, and as I'm reading it aloud, I edit for readability, and then I record, and either I get it on the first or second take, or it takes 20 takes. But because they're between 5 and 20 minutes, I usually just start over and go from scratch. I did mention that I'm putting it on the podcast host, and for that, I actually have an editor. My brother-in-law is a video and sound editor professionally. Like, he used to work for great courses and stuff like that. And so I owe him several sushi dinners that he has not taken me up on yet, but he puts in the little intro and he does some sound balancing and uploads it for me, as long as I have all the stubs prepped and everything like that. So that's really handy. So mostly it's scripted, but it's still my voice because it's me doing the whole process. And I did want to make a note that off of YouTube, I am a voice actress for the fairy tale podcast Anansi Storytime, Anansi Like the Spider. And we are on hiatus because our editor had a baby, and now we can't get our stuff processed and we can't get it out the door. And so we stopped making new material because we have like 10 episodes that and people volunteer and then don't follow through or don't have the time. And so you really need to make sure that if you have a certain level of, editing and production value that you're expecting, that you can maintain it and that you have a backup in case something goes wrong.
So Janine, how about you? As you're diving into the grand world of YouTube and you're trying to learn to edit.
So I think because I do a little bit different, because I am constructing for the most part. Clothing or participating. My very first video was me participating in a dressmaking challenge, which is what got me to finally jump into YouTube, because you had to make the dress in the allotted time frame and then post your video. And I was like, all right, well, now's the time to do it. And so when I decided to do this and to go ahead and start my channel, I was like, well, I could just do it with my iPhone. So I did my first video with my iPhone. I edited it all on iMovie, and I was like, okay, there's got to be a better way. And so I reached out to a friend of mine who does special effects and editing for big movies. Think Star Wars, Marvel franchise. He's a very good friend of mine. Actually met him at a convention. He was the first person to buy one of my books by someone I did not know. And that is how I met him and how we became friends. And so I asked him, I said, hey, I'm overwhelmed by cameras. I want to get a decent camera for this YouTube channel I'm starting. What should I get? And this is where I was spoiled. And because I had just retired from the Marine Corps, he was like, don't buy a camera. I actually bought you and Ron a camera as a retirement gift.
Wow.
So because he was planning on coming and he couldn't come because he had a meeting for a different film franchise, I was like, no, you need to work on that. Believe me, that needs work. And so he spent the money he would have spent coming to our retirement ceremony on a camera. And the camera is amazing. It's really good. It's a Sony. And I talk about it in my second YouTube video or third one or whatever. I think it's the introduction to who I am video. And then another friend of mine had been doing some podcasting stuff and wasn't doing it anymore. And so she had an old podcast, a very nice podcasting microphone. And she just gave that to me for my voiceover work. Like, I was just like, okay, cool. So I was very fortunate in that I was given this gear. I have, since I've started, been slowly accumulating other things like an overhead light ring so I could do some overhead shots for some of the close work that I want to do. I just bought my first light so that I could get more professional lighting. And as I'm sitting here, I'm not using it right now. I could have my whole setup much better lit. Please don't judge my channel on this. And I also asked my friend who does the editing, I said, hey, what should I edit my videos in? He said, just use iMovie. It's great. It's very basic and it's going to have everything that you need to include transitions, whatever. And so what I have tried is every video that I've made, I've tried to do something better. So it was maybe 5 videos in that I was like, I figured out how to put in transitions between scenes. So instead of just like a harsh cut, it actually dissolves or crossfades or whatever. And then the other thing is I learned how to, add the thing that I want to learn next is how to like superimpose a photo next to me. Like, because right now I'll like print out the picture and be like, this is the pattern I want to make. I'd rather be
StreamYard.
What?
StreamYard.
Okay.
I can go into it in a minute.
Great. That would be awesome. And then the other thing I learned was another friend of mine, when I went, I don't know how to make nice professional looking intros and outros. She was like, just get a Canva account. They're free. But I signed up for the pro one because it unlocks so much more to include a bunch of unlicensed music and things like that. So the editing does take time. Some editing takes more time than others. But when I'm sewing something, like this dress took me probably 10 hours to make. And that's fast. Okay. That is really fast for something this complicated. I was using a vintage pattern, learning a lot of skills. It was the first time I'd made it. So there wasn't a mock-up. I had to put the pattern together because it was a reproduction where I had to print it out. So it took a lot of time. Nobody wants to watch 10 hours of this, So there's some fast forwarding. There's some just cutting to specific places. And I do have one video where I did do a real time make a skirt with me just so people could see how long the process is. And that took me forever just because even if I didn't have to do a lot of editing, I did have to watch the whole thing from start to finish. So that was very long. So I'm getting better with every video I make, knowing what I'm going to want to put in, knowing, and so it makes the editing easier. But at the beginning, it was so time consuming. I got to the point where I was dreading doing the editing and like, why do I even have a YouTube channel? And there are times where I'm like, I just want to sew for me. I don't want to sew for an Instagram reel. I don't want to sew for a YouTube video. I just want to sew for me. And so I will just make a project of my own and not document it because I just want the pure joy of doing the art.
So how about you, Russ? What's your process look like?
So when I started this whole podcast and then YouTube, I knew for years I had been thinking about doing some sort of video series because and a lot of people told me like, Russ, you're so dynamic. You have a lot of energy. I think this would be a good medium for you. And I wanted to do it, but it's nice to have ideas, but you actually have to do it. And then when, when we kind of got locked down, that was sort of my impetus. And I made the decision. One day I said, I'm doing a podcast. I was literally live in 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. Now, I do not recommend that at all. Why? Because I had no infrastructure at all. I did not have a camera. I didn't have the right camera. I didn't have a microphone. I didn't have the lighting. I didn't have the right internet access. Nothing. So I was really sweating it because I had made these commitments. And I'm sort of someone, when I say I'm going to do something, I do it. My word is my bond. And I don't, some people flake out. I don't. I'm responsible that way. So I knew a friend of mine who had done some YouTube stuff and does a lot of editing. And he was like my guru, get this camera. First I had a boom mic there. It was terrible. It didn't work. It was like dangling over the thing. The arm wasn't working and the screws were falling off and it was just a pain. The microphone was crapping out on me. And I remember my very first episode, what happens, I realized is that I was relying on Wi-Fi. Classic rookie mistake. Very bad idea. So I had to go up. Instead of being down here, I went upstairs we have my wife's office, which just tons of light comes in. Light came in and like the room was all saturated with light because she's got a hardline Ethernet port, which I then went down. I have a hard line down here and I kind of got myself figured out. There's a ring light right over there. You can see there's I have the Christmas lights up here. It took me a long time to sort of figure out how to make it work because I'm in the basement and you can sort of see right here, like the window well is here and there's one over here and one in the back. And depending on when the sun sets, depends on how much lighting comes in here. So I had to get like paper. I had no shades on the windows and I had to figure all this stuff out. And, and as the year goes on, it stays lighter later. And as the year goes on, it gets darker earlier. You have to account for all these things. So when I finally kind of got that figured out, and I kind of got my rhythm and I figured out what I need and what works for me, I'm a one-man show. I do everything. I book the guests. I create all the marketing materials. The way I do my podcast is I have a script and I write it out. I write it on Sunday. It takes me about 45 minutes. Now it takes me about 45 minutes to an hour to do my first draft. On Tuesday, I re-edit my script and I have it up on my screen as I'm doing it because I have a certain time. There are certain points in my show where I do certain things at certain points and I have to keep an eye on the clock. And the way I handle my podcast is I'm very high energy. What I like to do is create an atmosphere so it feels like it's a live audience, even though it's not. That's in my mind. There's actually on the other side of the screen, there's 100 people right there and I'm talking to them. And it's my job to keep that energy going. So in my mind, I'm listening for the laughter when there should be laughter or the claps or whatever. Very high energy. I like to keep things momentum, but I'm also an active listener. When I'm interviewing, I kind of take things wherever they kind of go and I play games and I have my whole kind of setup. So when I do that, I tell everyone I record the hour. When it's over, I do my show on Wednesday night. I literally sit down on Friday. I upload the video to my YouTube channel Friday so that it's ready for posting on Saturday. Now, one of the things that I figured out, and I also use Canva, is that when you use those, and you have to use a PNG file, not a JPEG, is that it can't be bigger than 2 megs. If it's 2.1, it won't take it. And the thing is, if you create your graphic in Canva and it's free, guess what? It doesn't save. So then I got to go back and recreate and go back and recreate the whole thing to be continued. I want to hear that. But anyway, I kind of figured out a bunch of these kind of like little bits and pieces. And then I upload uploading the video itself to YouTube takes 8 minutes or whatever it is to click all the boxes and all the check marks and the tags and the settings and all that, and that kind of thing. But if I was going to offer any advice to anyone who's thinking about doing a channel is before you just dive in and box yourself into a corner, like appreciate that there are many micro steps along the way. And that's what it really is. It's not really about doing one big thing. It's about doing a lot of very little things. So even when I have let's see if I can find it here. So I have it's buried under here somewhere. I have a checklist for my show. And I check things like, and this killed me. One of the very first interviews I did, I had an author. It was great, except one problem. It did not record. Why? Because I was not actually logged into Zoom, so it didn't record. And so I learned that lesson hard. So guess what's right at the top of my checklist? Are you actually logged into Zoom, right? I reboot my computer before I do every single week. I reboot my computer just to make sure there's no glitches going on. I do a test recording about an hour and a half before I go live, just because you never know. Maybe the sound is wrong. Maybe the lighting's wrong. You just don't know what could be going on there. And I don't try. It's just my nature. I'm paranoid about technology because I'm not a tech whiz. And I got burned enough times where I know that it could be the mic, it could be the camera, it could be your internet access, whatever it is. All that has to happen is one of those things is wrong and you're busted. And what was just happening right here? My wife was printing something from upstairs and it was printing right here. So I had to mute this. So I had to tell my kids, don't jump up and down on the couch right up there, stomping on the floor when I'm doing my show. Don't come downstairs. Don't print things when everyone knows for that hour or that 90 minutes, go away. Don't make noise. Leave me alone. This is basically live TV. So just, clear the space. So this sort of, it doesn't seem like ultimately once you do it enough times, you start to figure it out and you know your rhythms. But my suggestion is have checklists, write things down. Don't assume that you're going to know everything because you know what? It's very easy to just forget one little thing. And the one thing that you forget, is going to be the one thing that's going to kill you.
Yeah, Morgan.
I have so many feedbacks for basically everyone. I'm sorry. So I did the high level, but I didn't really get into the tools and stuff I use. I have just a basic Logitech webcam and a blue snowball microphone that I had to re-weld or resolder one of the chips. Apparently it's a common thing that happens because if you look for the part you need to replace, everyone is asking, does it work for this one particular microphone? But the fix worked. I'm happy with it. It was a cheap fix, whatever. If you're doing a lot of showing other screens and having other hosts on, a lot of people either use OBS or StreamYard. And OBS is very, very intensive, like computer CPU usage. Yeah. I tried to stream. Like I could use OBS and like stream my own stuff and have my Google document open and it was fine. And then I tried to bring in other people in a Zoom and it shut down. Like I could stream, but I couldn't do anything else at the same time. So some laptops are more butch than others. Maybe you need a desktop, but that's why I went to StreamYard, which you can do the free one. I have the paid version. And it's web-based, and it lets you bring in several co-hosts. It lets you share screens. It lets you share pictures up in the corner. So you can do that without any post-editing. You can either record or stream directly to either Facebook Live, YouTube, or Twitch. And if you have the paid one, you can stream to Twitch and YouTube at the same time, which is what I do with my productivity sprints. Although I have been told Twitch bumps you down in the algorithms if you're not directly on there or if you're streaming to multiple places. So that's the thing. I have experimented some with using phone teleprompters because mine is scripted and I try to have it as close to the camera as possible just so I look less like I'm reading, but I'm still experimenting with that. I use Elegant teleprompter and just make sure the volume's off because once or twice I had an ad come in right at the end. You could just turn off the printer and then nobody can print stuff while you're on your.
I know it's just so sometimes I just don't like now. I just didn't think about it, and I didn't think that anyone would be printing, especially since I told them I'm going to be downstairs doing this very thing. But
I had to do the same thing just now. I had to. My husband and my housemate were upstairs talking, and I had to as soon as I was done talking, I muted and was like, "Hey guys, you're not doing this panel. Everyone can hear you."
I haven't had any issues with Wi-Fi, but my receiver's right behind the TV. But I do have a skylight in the kitchen because this is like the dining nook of my house that's set up as my office. And so I have tension rods and a curtain. And as we're going into summer, 4:30 is before the sun sets this time of year. I will look like, I will have no definition to my face. It will be white and glow in the dark. And it's not amazing.
I really have to check the lighting because of my head. the overhead light
Right.
beams
What,
off.
what do you mean?
Oh, and what's that like, right?
Yeah.
You know?
Shines.
It's right
we-
here are the
so-
biggest problem.
I had two other tips. I'm sorry.
Oh, nope, go ahead.
Okay. So I don't have a Mac, so I can't use the iMovie thing. So sad face here. But one of the things I learned this week was that Windows Image Viewer, you can just click resize and tell it how many pixels you want without having to like copy the image and paste it into Paint and shrink it until you hit the pixel or the megabytes you need for the upload. So that's a tip
What
that
was
I
that?
thought was really
Morgan,
So-
what was that?
Windows Image Viewer, just like opening the image. If you go to edit and you right click, resize is an option, and you can just experiment with resolutions until it says that it's small enough and just go a little bit under because it rounds up and when you upload. But
The other lighting,
has-
the other lighting issue I had is, so I've got my screen here, but I've got
Right.
the laptop here, and I didn't realize that the light from my laptop was
Yeah.
shining onto it was affecting the screen. So then I have on my checklist, make sure that I check the lighting on my laptop, just so it's
I
not
turned down my brightness by
That's
like
exa-
10.
Yes, that's exactly right. No, and I couldn't figure it for weeks. I'm like, what is happening? Why am I so white saturated? And that's what it was. Okay.
And sometimes if your white balance is off, you take a piece of white paper and you put it up next and you pull it back and it'll rebalance.
Is
I
that
learned
right?
that
Old
because
school.
I was putting a yellow Post-it note on my work camera and everything was yellow adjusted and it wasn't an amazing look.
That's cool. Okay.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm done.
No, no.
I'm done for real.
Well, a couple other things. So, I mean, the setup I'm sitting here on right now is a little Logitech 1080p. I'm on a Yeti mic because it's forgiving. You can tune it so that it doesn't pick up everything around you. You can also tune it to the point where it will pick up everything around you. For a lot of these shows, I tend to use this because it's a lot more forgiving than the Shure mics and going through the board and all the rest of that I use.
Hey, I'm sorry. Can I interrupt just for a second? Because you guys are using Logitech webcams. I have it too. But you can see it's a very wide shot in here rather than being close up. How do you deal with that?
Resolution.
Where? How?
If you go into Zoom and you go to video settings and you are you in the HD ratio for your webcam?
Probably.
What language is this?
Hold on.
It's
I'm
okay,
sorry.
Jack.
Next to
I
stop
have
video.
no idea what's going on right now.
If you click the little up arrow to go into settings and then you click on video settings. You can also get to it by clicking the green shield in the upper left corner and then clicking the gear.
And then the gear. Okay.
And then if you click on the video tab and then you check out the ratio,
Video.
which checkbox do you have? Original or HD?
Video. It says item name, latency, jitter, resolution.
Under video, there should be a thing that says camera and then HD or whatever your Logitech name is.
That
and
depends
then,
also on that.
Oh.
A couple of those settings you probably have to have it turned on. One of the other
Sure.
things to consider as well is the original audio settings, which I was very thankful when they released original audio because we did a couple of online live filking concerts before
Music
they
does-
released that. It was interesting to produce those. So
Yeah.
let's actually talk a little bit more about hardware because again, when we're down the main studio, we've got Shure mics, we've got lapel mics and lavaliers, and actually the cameras that I've got a couple of them down there are
Here it is.
4K cameras that you can get relative. I mean, like I say, you can upgrade hardware pretty quickly, but for those that are debating starting this, more than likely you have the device that is fading into my background so you can't see the smartphone. But whether it's iPhone, Android, whatever else, this will do the audio and video for you. I mean, it'll get you started before you go spend a lot of money. You know, take the device you already have. If you upload the video, you can actually go into YouTube and edit the video in there. You can put in markers, you can trim, you can do a lot of stuff within that before you start spending money on devices and audio to figure out, is this something you really want to do? And that's one of those things that a lot of people I don't think get is when you get into this, you get into podcasting, any of these sorts of things, there's a big investment of time and potentially resources that go into producing it and being able to do enough content to be productive. In other words, to get you an audience, keep an audience, and then actually do things like tell them, oh yeah, we have books. So how do you go about using the platform yourself to promote you, to promote books, to promote all these sorts of things? So we do book trailers, we do book videos, we do a lot of interview stuff. For some clients, it is a lot of things talking about the process, or Morgan, like you're doing with writing sprints. Because a lot of the time people want to know just as much about the process or research or what interests you to figure out if you are, somebody that they like and resonate with. So Janine, since you really haven't started using it to promote books yet, but since you're seeing and getting ground, with the craft, with creating all these sorts of things, what's it doing for you so far in terms of just getting out there?
So I will say, I have my very, very first video, which was posted 11 years ago, was one that when my first novel came out, it was back when book trailers were done for books. I don't know if that's still a thing, but it was. So I had it for my first novel. And so that was literally the only video on there for the past decade until I decided in October, I'm going to start a channel. And so technically my first video is a book trailer, and I have had several people who have since followed me for my sewing content go, hey, I saw that you have this book trailer. Is that book still available? I'm like, yeah, yes. And they've commented on my shorts, because there's I haven't figured out how you can message people directly on YouTube. I don't think that's a thing. If it is, please tell me, because it's very frustrating, because when I have drawing winners, I have to be like, hey, could you please email me so that I can send you your thing, drawing winner, and stuff like that. But the book trailer just sitting there with me not promoting it, because people are coming in for this other content, they are interested in that. And then I do mention when I talk about stuff, occasionally oh, hey, I fly airplanes. Oh, hey, I've written for Star Wars. Oh, hey. And then I'll get the comment of whoa, wait. Talk about that other thing. And that is also where I think the shorts are really good, because you can go into that stuff with the shorts. You can be hyper specific about who you are and what you do. This is primarily currently a sewing channel with some schooly content, which is a very interesting crossover. But my shorts, I have things like, here are my silly pugs and some things that they do, or I'm a very avid runner and I do a lot of Run Disney things. And so here's some running content, and here's the current silly dance trend going on Instagram. And I decided to do it, and I don't have a TikTok. The Marine in me and the person with the clearance I just can't. You couldn't have one when I was working at the Pentagon 6 months ago, and old habits are, I guess.
Well, I never worked for the Pentagon, and I'm never doing TikTok ever. So
yeah, and I still have a clearance. You still maintain one even after you retire. So there's no way I'll ever get a TikTok, and I'll just leave it there. So because people always ask me, "Are you on TikTok?" No, and I never will be.
I didn't think I was going to be, and then the recent cases came up, and I was like, you know what? I've reconsidered.
All right, maybe I should clarify. No, and I cannot be on TikTok. We'll put it that way.
Which is totally fine. Totally understand.
And
whatever
even
platform you're comfortable with.
And I mean, there's lots of platforms I don't do, but I'm very active on Instagram. Anyway, Jim, did I answer your question? I think that people just, it's all art and it's all creation, and this stimulates my mind. This was a lot of fun, because in the process of making my videos, I'm learning how to do a different new type of sewing. Sewing is the pandemic hobby I picked up. I made this blouse that I'm wearing, and it's a fun one, because I don't know if you can see, it's got Disney villains on it. like throughout. So that's what the print is, but you have to kind of be up close. And I love stuff like that. And so that process, that creative process really stimulates me, particularly when I was in a job where all I did was write and stare at a screen at work. And I did not want to come home and do writing. And so because it's been feeding my creativity there, I feel that learning how to edit video and how to use YouTube and how to put things out there is also stirring my creativity. And as such, I've also mapped out my next book series. I finally just did all the world building and the drafting, and now I just need to actually write.
Well, different creative actions stoke different parts of the creative mind.
Exactly.
That's why I go play with hot glass, is to try to not burn myself. But there's nothing like playing with fire at a couple of 1,000 degrees to help clear the mind.
Yes, and running does that. And so just, I think, being creative. But the one thing I will say, and I've been jotting little notes down, the thing that I have to be very careful with is I don't want this to become a job for me. I'm currently on a gap year. I purposely took a year off. I am doing this for fun. One thing you'll notice on my videos is I never say, this is not a judgment on people who do, but I never say, please like and subscribe, because and it's wonderful when people do. And I make sure to do it when I watch other people's videos, because I know it's so important for the algorithm. But for me, I don't want this to be a job. And so, when Morgan asked me on our little side chat, if I had planned out, if I'd done a lot of research before. No, I did nothing. I literally don't know what I'm doing. I am making this up as I go along. I don't have scripts. I don't have plans. I have a ton of footage, and then I'll sit down and I'll edit for a day and then queue up 3 weeks worth of stuff on my YouTube and then walk away.
I didn't ask about research. I just know me and several other women in my circle, including my mother, ended up with Bernadette Banner on their feed during early pandemic. And
that's
I watched
when she first
way
blew
too
up,
much.
Apparently, and so as I'm in the sewing YouTube community and learning about it, I'm finding out that her blowing up at the beginning of the pandemic actually is what got this whole sewing corner of YouTube to even grow. So I have definitely since gone and went, well, who's Bernadette? And because I saw her in a sewing magazine, and I was like, wow, she's awesome. But no, I didn't research her. And so because I just want to have fun with this. And so and same with Instagram, the minute that I feel like it's a drudgery or it feels like work for me, I take a step back and I'll take a 2-week social media break where I delete all the apps off my phone and I just won't touch them. Because if I'm feeling drained or burned out, it's not fun. It becomes work, and it's not creatively feeding me. And so I do the channel for me and for the engagement I'm having with people, because talking to them in the comments, that's fun for me. I reached out to a sewing pattern company and just said, do you guys want to do a collaboration? Figured they'd say no, because who am I? Have no following or anything. And they were like, absolutely. Do you want some patterns? And so I just asked, and they did. And then I reached out to another sewist who also sews similarly to what I do, but in her own, she sticks more toward vintage, true vintage. And I just kind of go off the rails, as I think that's becoming a theme here. And so we were like, let's collaborate together and let's do the same pattern and show how we do our own different takes on it. And so that's been a lot of fun. And to me, that aspect is what I really enjoy. And I want to help my friends' channels grow, and I want to see them do really, really well. And yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say that I have two thoughts that I'll share. Is that one is that, so as I've been doing my show, I've probably interviewed, I don't know, at this point, 150 or so folks, some repeat customers, you want to get guests who can deliver. But what I find is that when you invite people onto your show, you're really engendering a lot of goodwill. Because even if someone is nervous, and even if they don't do it, it's a kind of theory of everybody wants to be invited to the party. Maybe they won't come, but God, they like to be asked. And what I didn't know this at all until about a year ago. I was at a convention and I had invited someone on my show, and someone came up to me and says, Russ, you have no idea. Everybody wants to be on your show. Everybody. We all talk about it all the time. And I'm like, what are you talking? Because nobody tells me.
I want to be on your show, Russ. How do I get on your show?
Right. Well, we'll have to talk. It's you don't really know. Just because you don't get a like or a click, it doesn't mean that people aren't paying attention, and it doesn't mean that they're not interested. So I would just encourage anyone who's thinking about doing this is that, look, everyone's favorite word is their name. Everybody, right? They love it. So when you kind of invite them, they feel special. And I'm not saying that's the reason you should do it, but just understand that there's a very real human component there. And a lot of people, because not everyone, the big names kind of come back over and over, but there's only so many of those. Most authors or whatever space you're in aren't at that heightened level, and they feel like, it's just, it's the same 10 people get all the love. What about the rest of us? Well, one of my goals has been from the beginning is I want to get as many good gets as I can get. And I'm getting a lot of names that I never thought I'd get, but I want to make sure that I'm giving voices to people who often feel that they're overlooked. Yeah. So, the way I talk about it is I try to shoot up and down the stack. Just because you're a newer author or not that well known doesn't mean you don't have a good story to tell. It doesn't mean you don't have something to offer. I'm interested I'm curious about people and stories. And, so if you're not interested in other people, to me, it's a little bit challenging, and I am. The other thing that I would say is, while the video component is great, what I have found is, because we've only really been back on book tour for 6 months, whatever it's been, a little bit more robust. Doing that, I get so many guests from being in person. I have a lot of people coming up to me who I've never met. I watch your show. I love it. I don't even know who they are, but they're finding it. So you don't really know, but that live component, talking to people, not through a screen, actually helps the video portion of it. If you only live behind the camera, it doesn't mean you can't be successful, and it doesn't mean you can't be wildly successful, because some people really are, and they have the magic touch. Not that many people are intuitively great at it, but some are. But if you're not, interact with people in IRL, in real life, and talk to them. And it's amazing how much you'll see that the in-person interaction will feed your video series, and how your video series will feed your live interaction. So my suggestion would be not to look at your blog, your podcast, or how you're using your YouTube channel, that it only exists in a vacuum. It's part of a larger part of your life. And it's very easy for all of us to kind of be in this, screen mode all the time, but put the screen down, go outside and play with other people, and you'll see just how much interaction you'll get, and it feeds on it. And I find that it's really exciting, because so much of what you do, if you're an author like me, I was writing today, and I'm going to write tonight after this, and we're doing this. You're so alone, and you're so isolated, and you live in your little bubble. Go outside, remind people, just be reminded that there are human interactions out there, and they feed each other. And I find that it's it's energizing, for me anyway, to do both.
Can I just say one thing to what you were saying, Russ? I saw this on Instagram the other day, and it really, really resonated with me. Somebody said, wow, I only got 40 views and 40 likes. But if 40 people walked in this room right now to tell me they liked the thing I was working on, I would be
jumping up and down for joy.
Yes. And so I try to take that look at it. Mm-hmm. I'm just like, you know what? 20 people just thought this dress I made was awesome.
Yeah, that's right. Like if you went to a convention and you sat on a panel and 40 people in the room, you'd be like, damn, this place is popping. Right. So you're right. You're actually, you're so right about that. Thank you for that, Janine. That's an excellent point.
I'm just sharing what I saw.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right.
Well, that's one of the things we actually, when we started running this, and I've helped carry a lot of conventions virtual. We've done a lot of things for clients virtually and whatnot. When you do a convention, there's times you're sitting in the room and there's as many panelists as there are people in the room.
That's always fun.
Which is always
just give them a more intimate panel where they get to really drive what you're going to talk about.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, other times you may have 500 or 1,000 people in the room. But when everybody's like, "Oh, well, this only got 150 views," and you look and go, "Okay, well, the last convention you were at, how many rooms did you have that had 150 people in it?"
Right.
Yeah.
Or this one got 1,000 views, this one got 10,000 views, whatever the case may be. Especially with longer form like this, because it's an investment to come and sit and go through and be entertained.
That's right.
And be educated and hopefully get something out of it. So if you manage, I mean, like when we do Hot Off the Press, if you manage to get a couple of hundred people to watch and see about the book versus the investment of time and money to be at a convention, you may not be hand selling the books there, but again, this is all part of people learning who you are, what do you like, and what are you into? Because again, writers really are people. I know it's hard to believe.
Are we? I don't know.
I'm trying to spread the rumor. I'm trying to create the rumor. So, Jack, go ahead, Morgan. What have you learned about working from a YouTube standpoint?
So what I've learned is originally when I started out, I started putting my blog out in video format and screaming into the void. Nobody was watching. And part of that is I wasn't watching YouTube. That wasn't where I wanted to spend my time. I was spending my time in the blog space. And one of the best ways to get followers is to watch other people's stuff, especially in the same genres and stuff, and to comment, and not one of those self-serving comments. Comment on their content. And
it has to be obvious you actually watched.
Yeah. But people will follow you back. And that's one way to start getting traction, is to find other people in your niche and comment on their stuff. Watch their stuff for ideas and see, what sort of things you like and what sort of things you don't like. But when you collaborate, be careful. And I did not always vet. And I did end up post-streaming a productivity sprint with what I later found out was a teenager, so under 18, and they were not as structured as I like my streams. And so we're in the middle of a 20-minute productivity sprint and they randomly start chatting writing tips and stuff. And I'm like, but the timer is still up. What are you doing? So definitely do a little bit of vetting, and especially, as an adult, having a teen on my channel is legally in a weird space. So just reach out, make sure you watch their stuff and that they're above board. On my blog, I feature author guests and I do interviews with them. And it's mostly via email, and I've gone to post them and the interview was fine. And then I go to put up their links and I realize I cannot support that book. That book is not in my wheelhouse for whatever reason. And so vetting is a little, definitely something you want to do if people are coming to you rather than you going to them. Because if you're going to them, you've already vetted them, obviously. And personally, I kind of do the social media because for the dopamine, I've got ADHD and, I want that external validation because no publisher wants me yet. So I got to get that validation somewhere. And when I miss a week or two, I will drop half my followers and it'll take me maybe a month to build back up again because I'm still little, even if it's, a month isn't much. But I don't want to lose my progress for having missed a week. And I've managed to do it for 6 years. I've managed to do it for 6 years. So what's my excuse this time?
I definitely agree with you about making sure if you're going to have people on your channel to vet them in advance, just because you don't, especially if you don't know them, it's the first time you're doing it, do your homework. But what I do is up front, I give everyone the rules. I'm very clear about the rules of the road. And I really haven't had to do it. Once or twice I will, if I have to, I'll just mute you and ping you offline and basically say, you got to knock this off. This is, but that's not a huge problem. If you vet in advance, you don't run into those problems, but understand once you go live, you cannot control what other people do. They're going to do whatever they're going to do. So you want to have as much confidence as you can that you've got the right people. And it's okay if they're a little bit, if you want some eclectic personalities, that's all good, but just understand that, sometimes you have to be, it's a kind of a bend, don't break. But if you're not clear about what you expect from them, how can they be clear about what you expect from them? So it's good to just sort of, map that as much as you can. And if you don't know right away, you'll do a few, you'll figure out, boy, I know I don't. I had someone, I was closing out one of my episodes, and, this is active speaker, and I was doing my closing, and when I guess said, I just want to say one more thing, and they jumped up, it popped up on the screen, it completely blew my flow. So then I had to build in up front. I say, when I'm closing my show, no matter what, do not interrupt me. Don't interrupt me. If you forget to say something, it's too late. You've lost it. You're once we hit a certain point, you're done, and that's just how it goes. But I have to be clear with them about it, because it's not what I want, right? It's my channel, it's my show. I do it my way, and that's just how it is. Somebody has to be in charge, and ultimately, I make the rules. If you don't like the rules, that's okay. You don't have to do it. I'm not forcing anyone to be here.
But I also have to say that Russ has very clear, you're on my show. This is what we're doing. When you are collaborating with other people, for example, when Samantha Loves to Sew and I did our collaboration with the Vintage Sewing Pattern Company, I sat down and I sent out I don't want to call it a contract because we didn't sign it, but I basically wrote out, this is what the expectation is from everybody. This is the timeline. This is, what we're going to do on Instagram together. This is what we're going to do on YouTube together. This is what everyone expects. And then she asked me, well, how are we going to script this first video? And I was like, what are you talking about, a script? I don't script my videos. I just gotta go. This is the Wild Wild West. But she wanted a script. So I wrote out a script. It was a very loose one. But then she didn't actually do it and I didn't actually do it. And then we just sent each other our files. And then there was a lot of technology issues because we couldn't figure out how to send our files. And there was beating our heads against the wall. Ultimately, the videos got done. They're fantastic. She and I, there was a lot of talking via WhatsApp because she's in the UK, I'm in the US. And the Vintage Sewing Pattern Company, we got to know them really well. And they were just kind of eventually just tell us when you're done and we'll post it. But everybody knew this was the first time any of us, Samantha or myself or the Sewing Pattern Company, were doing anything like this. And so one of the things we talked about up front was being flexible, not freaking out. One of the owners of the company had a parent who died in the middle of all of this. And so she was apologetic. She wasn't more involved. And we were like, you got more pressing things going on. And then just life happens. And so we built in lots of time. We built in lots of flexibility. And then we had a very good time. We also learned a lot. There are certain things I definitely will never do again. And I don't think Samantha will ever do again, but things that we'll do better in the future. But yes, I think when it's your show and your channel, you do the rules. When you are working and collaborating with other people, you've got to be very flexible and also very clear on what expectations are.
So, Jack,
can you get the question again?
What have you learned from YouTubing in your expensive 3 weeks?
Yes. Well, I guess keep to a schedule. We do a lot of editing, so I don't have people on mine, so I don't have to worry about people going on a script, but I do have to worry about equipment. A perfect example, just read a book, would have loved to do it. Character had a Derringer. I can't find a Derringer. I'm asking all my contacts. I'm having trouble. I found one. It doesn't work. That doesn't do him any good. So, I got a schedule based on equipment availability as well as weather because we shoot outside. So keeping to a schedule is important in backlogging on the I have X amount of shows out, but I got a lot more ready to go because I did a lot before I ever put the first one. Just because it's not as simple as sitting here and just talking into the camera. I got to, I got to get a lot of the equipment together because we do the outside stuff, and we're doing one that's may or may not involve explosives. So we got to get that all ready. We got to make sure the fire department knows. We're going to make sure all the T's are crossed, the I's are dotted, and things along those lines. So that I found to be the biggest thing I learned, because I thought we'd just be able to turn the camera on and go, and without format, you just can't do it.
Well, we could keep going for a couple more hours, because that's part of it. Is there's always a lot here, which means we've got to do at least a part 2 coming up. But a couple of quick tips I do want to throw out there for everybody is, first of all, I recommend that if you're going to start this, get 5 or 10 in the can. Figure out that you really want to do it before you spend the time to get stuff out there. Figure out, do you like doing the video? Do you like doing the editing? Are you going to be scripted or not? I do a mix of both. The other thing is that there's a lot of work. And I think the one big thing that everybody can take away from tonight is, no matter what, there's a style that'll work for you. And the most important thing is, when you're doing content, it shouldn't be about the audience. It should be about what makes you happy. It should be about creating for you, because if you're happy doing the creative work, then the audience is going to come find you. It's going to take time, but the rewards are there. And I mean, but at the end of the day, it really is about another creative outlet. And it's one that you get to share with the world. They get to find out more about, who are you? What am I doing? And, as an author, because we really haven't talked at all about promotion of books, but that really is okay, because at the end of the day, it's all about promoting you. It's you, your brand. And if they like who you are, they're going to check out the books anyway. So before we get out of here, let's remind everybody where to find you guys. Of course, websites and social media, and those YouTube channels, plus if you've got a book or something to go out there and promote. So Russ,
Yes.
you're up first.
All right. So one of the series that I've been working on, as you can see, they're up on the wall, and I'll grab a couple of these books here. So this one is, so I write a series. Angela Hardwick is a sci-fi private eye, right? She takes on all the kind of cases that you would think a private eye would take: missing persons, kidnapping, murder, extortion. But she also takes on cases that deal with time travel and alternate realities and shapeshifters and whatnot. And it's a real blend. It's really, to me, it's sci-fi and noir. In my mind, she's a mix of, she's part Doctor Who, part Blade Runner, part Atomic Blonde. The first book is Crackle and Fire. The second one here is Fractured Lives. This one is Hot Ash. This is the third one. I'm finishing up the fourth one right now. And the fifth book I start writing in August. It's gotten really a lot of love, I have to say. It was kind of a big thrill when Nicholas Meyer, Star Trek II, Wrath of Khan, he gave me a big shout out for the series. And this just happened the other day. It kind of really blew my mind. It was absolutely unsolicited. So this comes from SFWA, that's a Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers Association. This is what they posted. I had no contact with them. They said, Dirk Gently did it so well. Angela Hardwick currently does it, but in between, this precious little fantastic noir being written. So they literally put me and Douglas Adams together and saying, you two are the only ones doing it this well, and there's like nobody else. So you take it for whatever you think it's worth. Remember, I didn't compare myself up there with Douglas Adams. I didn't do that. SFWA did it. So, and of course they are right. So it's really been it's a big thrill for me. It's going real well. I'm planning out to do kind of a 5-book series. I'm going to take a tiny break, and then I'm going to do another 5-book series with Hardwick. I've been with Hardwick for a long time. I've written a half dozen short stories with her that's appeared in various anthologies. I'm going to do another collection where I'm going to take those 6 that exist. I'm going to write 6 more. I'm going to put that out. And she appeared in 2 earlier novels. So she's really been a huge part of my life. And that's really been kind of really energizing. The new book that I'm writing now was actually my first attempt at sci-fi horror. It's going to be it's kind of a closed room mystery set up in it's essentially it's a Galaxy cruise ship. So think of an ocean liner on a cruise ship, except that it's in space. And the whole thing takes place on this one cruise ship. And it's a little bit of, The Last of Us and with a murder mystery. So it's kind of a sort of zombie apocalypse, sort of a murder mystery. And that's coming out in September. And like I said, in the 5th book, I'll be writing. After that, you can find me on Facebook. I'm just at Russ Colchimuro, at my website. You can check me out. I'm author dude Russ on Twitter and Instagram, and you can find it on YouTube. And I'll be back out on the convention circuit again, starting later this month. I'll be at Heliosphere in April, Crime Con in May, Shore Leave in July, Monster Mania in October, and then PhilCon in November. And I might do Camp Nikon in July as well.
Jack?
I'm Jack Cullen. I write an urban fantasy series called Recollections of a Rune Knight. The first book is Runes of Steel. It's about a police officer who works for a police department in a small sleepy town in Massachusetts. It's secretly where all the spellcasters and magical creatures hide out between ages of magic, and they have to deal with those problems as police officers. I have another series that's coming out this year. The series is called Locke Ferguson's versus the Alien. It's a sci-fi action comedy about a janitor who was a laughingstock of a small town because he got abducted as a kid. Nobody believed him until the aliens came back and he has to save the Earth. Sometimes it takes a janitor to clean up a galactic mess. And shockingly, the first book is called Locke's Galactic Mess. My YouTube channel is Books, Bullets, and Booze. It's book reviews with a twist. You were talking about books and getting the stuff out there. We're all about the indie books because we don't think they get enough loving on BookTube. Not that I'm disparaging BookTube. I love BookTube. So if you get some indie books that have weapons and booze in them, send them my way. I'll be more than happy to read them. I can be found at jackcullenwrites.com and on various social media as Jack Cullen Books. I would like to add one last thing because we were talking about equipment. Most of the stuff we were talking about was in-house. The equipment that we use outside when we do stuff. John Love, my video editor, uses a Canon EOS 7D. What that is, I don't know, but it's big and expensive and it works really well. All right, thanks.
Morgan.
Okay, so I'm Morgan Hazelwood. I have one short horror-ish story out with Dark Recesses webzine from the January 2022 episode, Just a Hike in the Woods. And you can find me everywhere as Morgan Hazelwood because branding, and you don't want to tie all your stuff to your current book because hopefully you have more than one in you, unless it's book of your heart, and that's fine. So you can find me at morganhazelwood.com, YouTube /Morgan Hazelwood, everywhere except Twitter, where I'm Morgan Hazelwood, because someone's been sitting on the account for 13 years with 0 followers and 0 tweets. Not better. So, yeah, check me out and let me know if you have books coming out because I feature author spotlights. So,
Janine. And you're on mute.
I was just telling my housemate who was kindly unloading the dishwasher that I was about to unmute and talk again. So she's pausing. So I am Janine K. Spendlove everywhere. So if you look, I don't know if it's popping up on the recording, but I'm at Janine K. Spendlove, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, though I'm probably on Twitter once every 6 months. I walk in and I go, oh, right, I don't like it here. And then I leave again. But I maintain my account and I am also on the book face. I don't TikTok, I don't Snapchat, but as we've discussed, I very recently do YouTube. I also have a website, which is a good landing spot. It has all my stuff. I'm on Goodreads as well. I have several books out, tons of short stories. That's all on Amazon. It is on Goodreads as well. And I did say that I've written, I primarily write fantasy, but I have also written some horror and some military sci-fi. And I did do a tie-in story for Star Wars a while back. So that's me. I love pugs. and retired Marine, yay. And I like to sew. That's my new, thanks pandemic hobby, hobby. Did I break the rules by saying that word? I can't
You're
remember what
good.
we're allowed to say or not to say. Um, and that's all. If I could give one piece of parting advice, we mentioned a lot of apps and things to use. And I talked about how I did subscribe to Canva Pro. You can do the free version or the paid for version. What I would tell people, just like we talked about earlier, if you're going to start a YouTube channel, stick with the phone that you've got. It's going to be great for your first few ones. Make sure this is something you really want to do. I didn't go out and buy everything at once. I've been adding once I realized I was committed. With Canva, I decided to go ahead and invest and get it because I could use it for other things as well, not just for YouTube. But I did do the free version first. So I would say don't start laying out a bunch of money until you are certain this is the thing you want to do. And particularly if you can find multiple uses for these things. And even if you know this is the thing you want to do, just grow it. You know, Rome wasn't built in a day.
And I've had the pleasure of being your host tonight, Jim Nettles, and you can find me at jamespnettles.com, authoressentialsworkshops.com. You can find me at creatingpros.com, the speculativefictionacademy.com, and of course, you're ConTinual. And rumor has it about the time this drops that Fairy Folk, We Folk on the big screen is finally going to be coming out somewhere towards the end of the month. So, till next time, go crank up those channels or have better choices than we do and pretend to be sane. Until next time, this has been ConTinual, and thanks for joining us all.